Hi, this is Bill. Welcome. And on today's video, I'll be talking about how to update or how to auto-refresh dashboard in ServiceNow. And one of the most common pitfalls that I see and common understanding, it is just a dashboard refresh and how bad it be. So I'll show you how to refresh or auto-refresh dashboard and at the same time doing it properly in making sure you understand the performance impacts and how applications are designed so you can implement your configurations correctly and plan your dashboard and reports in the correct way. So teams turn on auto refresh so dashboards will look more live and no one notices what's happening until performance is basically impacted, reports starting to slow down, and the platform instance starts behaving unpredictably. And this is not a reporting problem. This is a capacity planning problem disguised as a UI setting. So this video is for ServiceNow administrators, platform owners, ServiceNow developers, architects responsible for dashboards, reporting, and anyone designing dashboards that executives actually rely on. And by the end of this video, you will understand how auto refresh really works in ServiceNow, know how dashboard refresh ties directly to platform capacity, and be able to begin designing dashboards that stay accurate without silently consuming your instance. And if this kind of architectural clarity helps you, consider subscribing and joining the channel as a member. And this is where we talk about how the platform behaves in real environments, not just how features are basically labeled. Establish the foundation. ServiceNow dashboards do not auto-refresh by default. Since ServiceNow is a canvas, the platform has provided a shared responsibility on how you would like to configure the applications that it sits on top of the platform. So I'll give you an example by navigating to one of the ServiceNow dashboards. So let's go to asset. And as we navigate through the asset, and as we move to the top right, moving to edit mode and looking at the dashboard settings. So the auto refresh configuration is quite straightforward. And as you navigate to the top, you will have the ability to toggle or switch on a scheduled repetition. So the question is, how often or how real time do you need a report to be? So these are common questions that you need to establish and the why behind it. Since the requirement or where the dashboard sits on and also the widgets will require resources, and that will be CPU resources, network, and memory, to name a few. So let me draw to you the components of a dashboard. So what you're seeing at the moment, so you have the whole dashboard, and how it is designed, you have small widgets. So all these widgets are reports that what you see here are the representation of these widgets. And each widget is basically independent on its own calls on the back end. So as I move my pen to the right, for simplicity, we will have three layers. So we will have the web front end, the application layer, and also the database layer. So how ServiceNow has designed it as a cloud environment, we do not have direct access to the database. And what we can configure is the application layer, where your script includes run, and also the UI on what you're seeing now. On each step of the layer, it will have network calls that can go back and forth. And since the behavior service now is using glide record calls on the application layer, so what happens, it creates a query here, translates it using the glide API, calls to the database, and comes back with a query or the results. So now, having said that, depending on how big or how complex your query is, it requires a lot of resources. And as you misconfigure your dashboard and reports requiring higher resources, you'll receive a report that ServiceNow will ask you to improve the performance of the platform. And it will come back to you as a technical debt that you need to fix it. So one of the few questions that you need to establish is, how many users is going to access the dashboard and what type of queries and how those queries basically perform to ensure that your implementation is correctly planned according to the allocated resources. So if you have 10 report widgets viewed by 20 users and a dashboard that refreshes every minute is effectively executing 200 report queries per minute, and that's not a UI decision. And this is an architectural approach that you may want to consider. And as you use this refresh interval minutes, the widgets itself here, which calls the database, like what I show you here, the queries using glide record or calls to the database are synchronous by nature. So meaning they goes to a queue, and if there's so many queues, they will have a bottleneck. So your dashboard loading will start to struggle. So from a capacity planning standpoint, reports consume capacity at view time. And I'd like you to also understand the difference of performance analytics widgets and report-based widgets. So the PA widgets or performance analytic widgets use pre-computed indicators. So as you've noticed that they have scheduled jobs, so they have a shift load to schedule day where the refresh is on a specific time and consider. That's why it comes back to the question how real time the data should be. So as you answered these questions, the number of users, the number of report widgets, and if they can wait on viewing the report like once a day or once a week, then your implementation and configuration will be technically correct. And if this is helping you rethink dashboards as platform workloads, make sure you subscribe and join as a member as you get deeper architectural breakdowns like this, especially around reporting and platform performance. And my question to you, do you know how many queries your dashboards generate per hour today? And these are very important questions that you need to respond to. Who are your audiences? How often does the data actually change? Is this for operational awareness or executive insight? What happens if this dashboard is opened by 50 users? So as you move forward to an auto refresh perspective, you should always have a defined audience, a justified interval, and an understood cost of capacity. And another technique that I'd like you to look at is being able to use the data caching. So this is one other technique that you can basically utilize. So data caching, how it works, you will be using in-memory capacity, the server side and the application layer. So what happens, you get a big query from the database and save it to a ServiceNow object inside the application layer. And you can decide when and how often you need to refresh data. And as you implement this, you will notice a significant change of performance of your widgets and the whole dashboard. And as you decide which one to move to, and I fully recommend using this technique instead of having an auto refresh, which is impacting platform performance. So eventually, we are looking at the dashboard level, which is here. Since widgets are also independent on their own or their own application by itself, you can see this diagram on the right as its own independent queuing system. So meaning each widget, let's say widget 1, widget 2, and widget 3, they will have their own independent calls to the database. So as you can configure them respectively, you can apply a technique called lazy loading. So meaning as you load the report or the whole dashboard from the database itself, then what happens is, how big the query is, it will independently load from each specific widget. And you can easily do that by navigating directly to the report and configuring it directly to data update, which you see here on the lower right. So as you plan your dashboard and reporting implementation, as you come to this video, is to learn about auto refresh dashboard in ServiceNow. So consider the issues that you may encounter, and I want you to treat dashboards as consumers include refresh behavior in design review, default to executive dashboards using performance analytics, and never enable auto refresh without understanding the impacts of the load. So in summary, auto refresh in ServiceNow is not a convenience feature. It is a capacity planning decision. When you design dashboards with refresh behavior in mind, you protect platform stability, reporting trust, and decision maker confidence. So that's how dashboards move from decoration to architecture. If you want more ServiceNow architecture and platform level deep dives, subscribe to the channel, join as a member for extended discussions. And my question to you, how do you currently account for dashboard load and refresh behavior in your instance? Have you ever traced performance issues back to your dashboards? I'd like you to share your experience, and this is where your real learning happens.